Managers of Reddit. What was the worst case of I demand to speak to the manager you've experienced? Story 1 at Red Lobster. Someone grabbed the manager and told him his shrimp was cold, wanted a free beer, and he could get better fish by fishing. This manager was my dad and was meeting us after work and apparently looked like an authority figure since he had a tie on. My dad replied, "That's cocktail shrimp, you moron." Story 2, I worked at an independent chocolate shop that sold various flavors of truffles, brownies, and drinks. We had non-dairy options, vegan options, and nut-free options. A woman demanded to speak to the manager because we did not have a dairy-free, nut-free, sugar-free, vegan option. Luckily, the owner literally just laughed and said, "We do have one, it's called water." I have never seen such entitled rage. Story 3. Obligatory? Not a manager, but maybe not the worst, but this was definitely the dumbest I ever saw. A sign was accidentally left up from earlier in the week advertising men's Levi's as buy one, get one half off, so for 2 pairs, it would be roughly $90. The current sale was to get 2 pairs for $70. Had a lady pitch an absolute fit that they weren't ringing up buy one, get one half off, she was being ripped off, etc. Tried to explain to her that we had accidentally missed a sign, but that she was actually getting a better deal at the current price. She wouldn't have any of it and demanded to speak to the manager. Store leader comes out and tells her the exact same thing, but the lady will not listen and is adamant about getting them at the price on the sign. Store leader finally gives up and tells me to just go ahead and do a price override and charge her the extra money. Lady leaves smugly, like she thinks she's just worked us over big time, and makes some kind of comment about how I need to learn to listen to customers on the way out. TLDR lady spent an extra $20 on jeans because she wanted them for the price on an old sign. Story 4. Managed a liquor store in a college town. People would always ask to speak to a manager because we wouldn't sell them alcohol without a proper ID. Or they would try to show me a school ID, like that would mean anything to me. Also got some social security cards, birth certificates, or other forms of irrelevant pieces of paper like a picture-punch photocopy of their ID. The best is when I would work up at the front registers and people would tell me to go get a manager and I would do a 360 and say, "Hi, now off." My boss didn't care, he was a good friend of mine and would laugh. I didn't get shitty unless they deserved it. Story 5. I was a shift lead at a GameStop and was the manager on duty with one other associate in the store. We were pretty busy. Both the other employee and I were on registers ringing through our own respective lines. Poor guy I work with gets this soccer mom haircut that I knew was going to be trouble, and she is trying to return a new game that had the seal broken on it. Against return policy, can't help you. So lady then gets really upset and demands to cancel all of her son's pre-orders. My guy obliges and is preparing to give her her refund in the store credit because her son had only paid for the pre-orders with trades. You can't mix match tenders, so my guy informed her so. That was just it. She was instantly screaming and calling my associate a liar. He literally turns the computer screen towards her and shows her the entries in trade credit, but she isn't having it. "Let me speak to your manager." Dude points to me. I wrap up with my customer and we trade registers so he can keep helping out. I ask her how I can help, to which she screams her experience at me. I reiterate what my buddy informed her and that there isn't any way we can get her cash back. She claims, "Well, I'm going to call your corporate office and tell them that your policy doesn't apply to me and I've never been treated like this before." To which I happily offer her the corporate number and advise her that telling a corporate customer service line that they believe they are exempt from policy is probably not the best strategy. Woman gets red in the face and starts looking around the store, and God forbid the poor man, the old manager, walks in. He does not work there anymore, but the woman recognizes him from his time at the store. She begins accusing me of lying to her because she knows that he is the real manager and that he can help her. Nope. Dude just trying to shop, she ended up just leaving in a huff. Story 6. Worked front desk of a hotel. Had a woman throw a tantrum because the state we were in charged a 6% room tax. She demanded that I remove the tax. I told her that we had no control over taxes. She still wouldn't accept the reality of taxes, so I printed off contact information for her state representative and told her to direct her complaints to them. She did not like that at all. She started screaming, so I got my manager. My manager said basically what I said, that we cannot legally remove a tax, so the woman grabbed the bowl of mints on the counter and threw it at my head and stormed out. We had her credit card on file and charged her for the full amount. Story 7. One of the heads of a radiology department was infuriated when there was a network outage in his area, stormed up into our support area screaming for a manager, me. Listened to him rant and rave and finally decided to take a walk down there to see what I could do. Start looking around and I find a bunch of $10 network hubs splitting one PC connection to 8 PCs. I started laughing and asked who put these hubs in. He said, I did. What's so funny? Explained that he was the source of his own problem, started disconnecting the hubs, and guess what? The network came back up. I confiscated about 7 hubs and told him if he needs more connections, he has to contact engineering and have them run more lines. He flipped out and I just walked down the hall to his VP's office and explained what happened. When I was leaving the office, the VP called him. He no longer works here. Story 8. I've had unhappy customers call and ask for the owner of the company by name because they Googled it. I explained that that person is technically an owner, but has nothing to do with the business and doesn't even live in the same state. Then I go on and solve their problem with what authority I have. Meanwhile, I'm that owner of the company. Never show all your cards when negotiating. Story 9. So when I worked at Starbucks, we, as you can imagine, had plenty of shitty entitled people come in expecting the world of employees barely paid above minimum wage who've been awake since 3 a.m. or earlier. We had people blaming us for the fact that they were late for work and were going to be fired. People blaming us for being late picking up their kids. Kids blaming us for being late to school. Plenty of, but I ordered a venti, why did you give me a grande? Or, this coffee is cold because I've left it sitting out for an hour, but I want you to make me a new one for free. Or, you aren't being enthusiastic enough after 8 hours of being here, and so sleep-deprived you don't know what your name is. But probably the worst, funniest was Libby. Libby was a regular who we really wished wasn't. She was overly demanding and had one of those super complicated half-calf double soy triple whip, hold the cream, half the sugar, and do a backflip when you serve it to me types, and she could tell if you got her order wrong and would make you remake it until it was right. She also would steal from our tip jar right in front of our faces. She'd pretend to put a 5 in and then pull out 4 ones, but she'd take out 5 or 6 ones instead. And one time during this little switcheroo of hers, she accidentally dropped a $100 bill out of her wallet. The good thing about Libby was that she only came in once or twice a week, but that meant that we were the ones who had to find this $100 for her. She didn't notice it for a few hours afterwards, and when she did, she called in and asked for the manager, and asked her if she'd seen it. Since she would have dropped it out in the lobby, where we very rarely went since we were so busy in BOH, we went out to check but found nothing and told her that a customer must have taken it, and that we were sorry, but there was nothing we could do. She flipped her. Shit. That's my rent money. I'm going to be kicked out of my house. Do you want me to be homeless? You hate me and want me to be homeless. You shitty fuckers, I hate you and you're terrible. Go fuck off and die. The supervisor came out and gave me the gist of what she'd said while begging me to find this money. There were also some racist accusations since the neighborhood this S-Bucks was in was predominantly immigrants, and Libby was your standard white liberal until put under pressure. Anyway, so a week passes and still the money hasn't shown up. Libby calls us each day, multiple times a day, to find out if we've found her money. Sometimes she yells and screams, sometimes she doesn't. Either way, the answer's always the same. We hadn't found her money. So she comes in again and pretends like she hasn't been cussing us out for a week straight, is all happy and bubbly and jokes about losing the money and how she's just so scatterbrained sometimes, haha. She tries to talk me into giving her free coffee since we lost her money, but I tell her that she has to pay anyway. She grumbles and opens up her wallet, pulls out her card, and out flutters a $100 bill and lands on the counter. We both look at it. She looks into her wallet and after a moment goes, "Oh, that's right. I hid that $100 in my credit card slot for safekeeping so I wouldn't lose it. You can stop looking for my money now." That was it. No apologies for the abuse throughout the week, the accusations, anything. I know I shouldn't expect one, but I think she realized that she fucked up, though, because she didn't show back up for a couple of weeks. TLDR. She thought that we stole her money after she stole our money, later found her money in her wallet, safe and sound. Story 10. Several years ago, I worked as a supervisor at a call center. This was referred to me because he wasn't happy with the answer he was given by one of my workers. He asked me for the manager again. I told him I was the manager. He said, I want the manager. M-A-N manager. Now give me somebody with A and a tie. I hung up immediately. Then I died laughing. Story 11. I was running a coffee shop by myself when this dude came in. Asked for an egg sandwich, no big deal. I start making his, then the next customer asks for a BLT. I start warming the bacon on the skillet next to first customer's egg, and this guy waits until I hand him the already made sandwich to freak out. He needed his food to be halal, but our coffee shop was very much not halal. After demanding free food, refund, etc., he starts getting heated and loud. He tries to pull the whole, "let me see your manager" thing. Unfortunately for him, it's me. He literally had been yelling at me for 15 minutes when I said, "You know what? Let's call my friend, the owner of this establishment, and see what they have to say about it." I dial her up, explain what's going on. He grabs my phone from me, tells her he's going to call the police and file a lawsuit for discrimination, throws my phone on the ground, then storms out. Story 12. I had a woman call to tell me that she spent too little on an ice cream cone. We had a special that was like 2 scoops in a waffle cone for $5, and for some reason she only got 1 scoop and said she didn't know about the special, despite there being signs all over the shop about it. She claimed that my worker didn't offer it to her. I didn't focus on upselling at our store, so this wasn't a big deal to me. I apologized to her, but I was also like, what exactly do you want me to do about it? This happened yesterday. I'm assuming you ate the ice cream, so you can't return it. She wanted a refund anyway for the inconvenience. I asked if she had a receipt. She said she didn't. I said no, go without a receipt. She said she didn't get one at checkout. I explained to her that in my state we're not required by law to give a receipt for cash-purchased food service items. So if she didn't ask for one, tough titties. She kept pressing, saying she demanded to speak to the manager. I explained that I was the manager. She then asked if there was another manager she could speak to. I told her no, I was end of the line, top of the heap. No one else was going to tell her anything different. She huffed and told me she would be by to discuss it in person. She never came in. Story 13. I worked at a gas station. Customer came in, red-faced, and stood at the counter. I greeted him, and he starts spouting off a tirade about how we cheated him on the price of gas. Since he didn't come in and pay cash, I assumed he paid credit. I explained to him that credit is a few cents more than cash. You can't do that. There's nothing saying that anywhere. I gently explained that the LED sign has cash next to the price, as well as a sign on top of the gas pump itself breaking down the cash, credit prices. It's a large display. He adamantly refused to believe the signage was out there. So I left the counter, walked him out to his car, and pointed to the sign above the pump. That wasn't there before. You're tricking me. Buff dude, how could I have done that? This is fraud. I'm calling the police. Sure, go ahead, sir. I'll be inside. Police came, dutifully listened, wrote a report, and then sent him on his way. Obviously, nothing came of it, but wow. He was so angry. TLDR. Pay attention to the signs, people. Story 14. I was busy at Christmas at an old job sorting out wrapping paper, etc. The queue got large, so I jumped on the till. A customer approached and complained about having to pay 5p for a plastic bag. The charge just started. She said she wasn't going to pay, so I charged her and asked for the next customer. She moaned that she wouldn't be able to carry everything. I asked for 5p. She asked to speak to my supervisor. I said I'll go get him. I left the tills, turned a corner, waited a few seconds, and reappeared, informing her I was in charge. Story 15. This one is kind of a recurring problem. Fortunately, as a manager, I only have 2 people above me, the general manager and the owner. We have a woman that works for us, is the sweetest woman in the world, but she is a larger woman, older, 65, and comes from a farming and military background, so she is strong and stocky. Unfortunately, she is often mistaken for a transgender person, even though she is not. Not that we have a problem with that either. Anyway, multiple people have refused to do business with her based on her appearance. We do have booking fees at our establishment, and anyone who sets an appointment with her is subject to the cancellation fee if they cancel without notice. I have had her come out to greet clients, and as soon as they see her, say, "Nope," and turn around. Without getting into detail, our business has nothing to do with appearance. I then charge them a cancellation fee. Often, I get a call a few days later, asking what the charge is. Myself, or my subordinates, Say it is for canceling service without proper notice. At least 4 or 5 times a year I get to hear some try to stammer to me why he should get a refund. I always make them say it, as most of the time they try to dance around the issue. I had a last-minute thing come up. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, but your personal life can't affect our business arrangement. She wasn't what I expected. Oh, in what way? You know. No, sir, I don't. Well, cue lots of stammering, etc. I will not give refunds for this. My boss won't and my owner won't. If they really want to push chargebacks against us, they can, but we aren't about to let people do this. Story 16. I was managing 2 stores while one manager was on maternity leave. That day, I had a terrible cold and nobody to replace me. So I went to the store, opened it, and went sleeping in the back store, leaving it to the experienced salespersons. That was the day that that woman, who was the one returning the most clothing in that store, decided to return some clothes again. She asked for me, screaming that the employee couldn't be trusted. Big mistake. Imagine my face red with fever, not wearing any makeup, hair undone. I was scary looking. I took back the clothing and then I escorted her out of the store, saying that I never wanted to see her again, that she was a waste of time and if she was returning that much clothing she was not satisfied anyway. A couple of weeks later, I was at the other store and guess who I saw? That? She looked at me for a second and left. Don't with me when I'm sick. Story 17. Used to work in call centers doing tech support for a home broadband company. One member of my team, Victor, was a lovely fella. Absolutely one of the nicest people I've ever met. He was from Niger and had the thickest West African accent you've ever heard. Anyways, he was helping this one customer who wasn't having it, that he had a line fault an engineer would need to attend. He was flipping his left, right, and center. Asks to speak to a manager. I get pulled in. Hello, sir. What's the issue? This idiot I've been talking to refuses to fix my broadband. Well, sir, Victor has told me the issue and I agree that you need an engineer visit. And another thing, why am I speaking to an Indian? Pardon? Why am I speaking to an Indian? You're not, sir. I'm English. Not you, the idiot before. He was Indian. Well, not that it's important, but Victor is actually African. Pfft, they're all the same color. It was at that point I hung up and forwarded the call to legal. Fuck that. Story 18. I worked in a nice little geek shop that sold used books, games, memorabilia, guitars, etc. And this kid was buying Attack on Titan stuff, and they were talking about the next one. I never watched the show and they said rhetorically, I wonder what the wall is made of. So I said, the wall? It's made of people. The wall is made of people. And they laughed since they either got the Soylent Green reference or at least thought it was a funny thing to say. Well, their mom, chai, grandma didn't like that one bit. And after they paid and left, she came back in furious and demanded to see the guy who gave away the ending of the book. The kids were saying that I was just joking, and I didn't even see the show, read the manga. I came over to see what the problem was, and she said, if I find out you spoiled the ending of that book, I will have you fired. And some nonsense. I apologized and explained I was making a joke, didn't know the first thing about the show. Was never brought up again, but those kids were super embarrassed. Story 19. Red Lobster. Lady said to me, waiter, I am going to feed my child with endless shrimp. Now, you may think you will charge me, don't. If you charge me, I will just call corporate and get free gift cards and come back and eat again. I responded, I have to charge you, and that my manager will be over. I told the manager and she said, when she calls corporate, that gift card money comes out of our bonus money. Basically, corporate fucking us managers. And yet corporate automatically sends gift cards the moment you call, and they also train me to charge her for the extra shrimp. Basically, a lose-lose. Fuck Darden. Story 20. Not a manager, but I used to be a developer at a very small firm. I was the one who answered the phones, either because I was the only one with social skills or because I was the only woman. Either way, one time this very unpleasant man called and asked some questions, and I directed him to our online form for prospective clients. He got huffy and said he wanted to speak to a developer. I explained that I was a developer, just one who also answered phones. Him. That can't be right. You sound so young. You must be somebody's daughter or something. Me. I mean, that's technically true. Story. 21. 21 yo female here, 19. At the time this happened. Worked at a popular quick service, aka fast food, chain was listening to one of my crew members interact with a customer in drive-thru. The customer was asking a lot of questions about prices on meals, without drinks, but wasn't really listening and asking the same questions over and over. My crew member, I'll admit, definitely had an attitude, but part of the reason I was listening in on them was because she was being so patient with this customer for once. At one point, my crew member accidentally said the wrong price. You know how often you jumble up words when you're speaking off the top of your head? The customer gets quiet, then says, "You know you're bullshitting me, right?" And proceeds to freak out over our DT speaker, asking to speak to me. I take over on the headset and try to explain to her that my crew member accidentally said the wrong word, that her meal without the drink would indeed be cheaper, etc., etc. She wasn't having it. She cuts us off and comes to the window, still going off. She asks me, "What the is wrong with you?" And I have zero idea what she means, so I ask her, "What do you mean?" We're obviously idiots, so she says, "I mean, what the hell is wrong with you?" Okay. It basically went on like that for a good 5 minutes. She was just accusing us of pretty much nothing, just yelling that we're liars and bullshitters and the like. I'm absolutely dumbfounded. After people behind her started honking, I think eventually I just gave her the meal for free to get her the heck out of there. Also pretty sure she asked for the corporate number, which I gladly gave her along with my name and our restaurant number. Try explaining whatever we did to her to corporate. The next customer that comes up to the window immediately goes, "Damn, that bitch was crazy." Made the whole thing worth it. Story 22. I worked the customer service desk at a grocery store. One afternoon, a guy came storming over after getting checked out and threw a package of beef in front of me. He starts going off, yelling and cussing at me because he was supposed to get a $3.54 discount, but the register only took off $3.53. He was screaming at me that he wanted his penny back and that it wasn't even about the penny, but it was the principle of the thing. By the time he was through, he had yelled at me, my customer service manager, and our store manager on duty. As soon as I gave him that penny, though, he shut right up and left. Principle of the thing, I guess. Story 23. I'm a manager at a McDonald's. I worked at a store right off an exit to the highway. Woman bought a burger, let it sit, and wanted a refund because it was cold. She had bought the burger in another state. Demanded money from the cashier. Demanded to see me. Demanded corporate number. Story 24. I was a young manager at 19F at a shittily run restaurant in a strip mall. 2 doors down, there was construction going on. One of the construction workers came into my restaurant for food. He was slimy looking and obnoxious. I took his order. It was like Subway, but not. In that I made the food as customers pointed to what they wanted, but it was not Subway. He asked me for Wi-Fi. I told him I was sorry, but it wasn't available for customers as it wasn't available for workers either. He then tells me that's too bad. He wanted to watch while he ate. You know, in one hand, food in the other, laden with my special sauce. Horrified, I look to another employee who just laughs. The customer tells me he's calling corporate, and I slunk to the back so I wouldn't have to deal with the disgustingness. He claims we must have Wi-Fi. This is bullshit. We must be lying to him. I want to speak to the manager. I am the manager, and you still aren't getting Wi-Fi. Weeks later, he returns with more grossness, and I quit. Edit. Obviously not the worst period, but it stayed with me and I was horribly uncomfortable, lol. Story 25. Today, I had a guy scream at me for my manager. The call was escalated to me because I'm a supervisor. We don't have managers here. He wouldn't tell me what his issue was. He got verbally abusive, so I hung up. He called back and got my coworker, who is a dude. Issue was resolved in under 5 minutes. Story 26. I used to work at the concession stand cafe at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center. We had snacks like potato chips and candy, as well as pre-made sandwiches from a local sandwich shop. We only got a certain number of sandwiches for each day, so when we ran out, that was it. This one lady who was in a wheelchair came through my line, telling me how she was diabetic and needed to eat a meal. I showed her that we had trail mix, candy, and chips, but she absolutely could not eat any of that because she was diabetic. It had to be a sandwich and nothing else. I told her we literally didn't have any sandwiches left, but she just kept repeating about how she was diabetic, and she was told there would be sandwiches. She was being incredibly rude to me, making a scene, and said, I was told there would be sandwiches. Probably about 10 times. By this point, there was a long line forming behind her while she was making a scene. She asked for the manager, so I told her she could step out of line and wait for the manager, but she wouldn't budge. The manager came over and told her the exact same thing that I had. She eventually calmed down, moved out of the line, and agreed to have chips and candy for free. I don't know who that told her about the sandwiches, but I want to slap them. Story 27. I was kind of the assistant manager at the retail store I worked at. We were relatively small and our actual manager bounced between our location and another one, so she wasn't around every day. If she wasn't around, all, "Can I see the manager?" questions went to the employee who was there the longest and was acting manager. Most of the time, conflicts were easily resolved and we didn't need to call our actual manager. After a long-time employee quit and moved away, I was second in rank under my manager. I was the youngest person working at the store. I had just graduated high school and worked for the store for about a year. All the other employees had only been working for 4 months or less. We had a high turnover rate because mostly college students were hired, and it was the start of summer. It was one of our slow days, so it was just me and my middle-aged coworker working. Let's call her Jen. Jen was 25 plus years my senior, but this was her first retail job and just needed some extra cash on the weekends. We sold high-end products with specific warranties. I was on my break, so it was just Jen on the floor. Our manager was on vacation out of the country, so we could only reach her by Facebook. This angry woman comes in demanding a new pair of high-end sunglasses because the screw came undone on her pair, which made the glasses loose and inevitably popped the lens out. This happened while she was in a parking lot, so when the glass lens fell out, it shattered. Her 1-year warranty was up, so we could only offer her 20% or so off a new pair, or she could contact the manufacturer directly to see if there was a faulty part. We are always told of faulty parts and recalls, so she just didn't tighten her glasses when the screw was loose. She was not happy about her options, so she went off on poor Jen. Angry woman then asked to see the manager, who was me that day. When I came out and asked her what the problem was, she was fuming. She didn't believe that I was the manager. Granted, I do look young and I have a high voice. She called me a bunch of names and started going off on Jen again. She asked if Jen was the actual manager and only said I was to get out of the situation. I kept telling her the options we could offer, and she continued to scream. Finally, she left, but not after throwing her $300 sunglasses on the ground as she walked out and left. They were definitely beyond repair now, or warranty now. After, I Facebook messaged my manager, who was on my side. She told me to clean up the glasses and throw all the parts in the trash. Funniest part is that the manufacturer only allows repairs if all the parts are there when sent in. Without the pair of glasses, she wouldn't even be able to get a replacement lens or screw. I quit after that summer and I never heard a complaint about the incident. Story 28. I was the VP of sales for a F500 here in the States. At about 6:30 p.m. my office phone rang, and it was a person from HR asking if I could take a call in which the client was irate and threatening legal action. I get on the phone and I quickly realize there is zero chance of making this man happy. And ironically, I'm a big fan of firing shitty clients. The things he was demanding were simply ridiculous and I politely refused. I also stated that I would personally allow his company from its contract with no fees or costs. Of course, still not good enough, and I eventually hung up due to the screaming and foul language. Long story short, I found out the next day that he was arrested for trespassing that evening while trying to enter our corporate suburban office with 2 guns. But the joke was on him. BCI worked in our corporate downtown office. Story 29. This happened before I started working in the store, but a trailer park SK mother was stupid enough to steal from us, and then tried to purchase a sale item to make it look less suspicious. When the cashier, who was aware of the situation, was acting strangely, she took offense and demanded a manager be brought over. Our lovely and heavily pregnant manager calmly informed her that she was aware there were stolen goods in her bag, and this woman punched her in the face. Story 30. I work in the admissions department at a zoo. We work closely with the membership department and are really friendly with each other. When people purchase membership, they get a card that says their name, how many adults, how many children, if they are allowed to bring in guests, etc. The card says clearly that you must show ID per card. Sometimes we are friendly, are lazy, and ask for one ID for the whole group. Well, a week ago, some guy didn't have his IDK. How he drove to the zoo, since you need a form of ID to drive. We told him that without an ID, we can't let him in. The guy got mad and started screaming at us, saying random to us. He demanded to see a manager. Good thing our manager, for admission not membership, was on site. She explained to Guy that without ID we can't let him go in. showed him on the card where it explains to show ID. The guy screams at her, "Am the know who paid the membership, I should be allowed to go in without ID." My manager responded, "No ID, no entry." He asked her to see a manager. Her response was, "I am the manager." He then asked if there was someone higher than her he can speak to. So she told him, "If you want to do anything, you have to speak with membership." So he goes to membership, and what they told us is he was being in and screaming that he paid for it and blah blah blah. The manager for membership was called, and because he screamed at him, they deny his entry to the zoo. Story 31. Obligatory. Not a manager, but I work at Arby's, and our building was getting remodeled, so we were closed for the last week of the remodel. We had people call and say that we messed up their food or something yesterday or some bullshit, but we've been closed for the past week. People just trying to get some free food, I guess. Story 32. Oh boy. Never thought I'd get to share this. The worst customer interaction I've ever so much as heard of. I was the manager at the time, in a hospitality setting. There were 3 of us on shift. One of my staff, let's call her Steph, had blue hair and piercings. Whilst I was handling the kitchen, cleaning up and cooking stuff, our job emphasized everyone being able to do every task. Her and the other staff member, Abby, were serving customers at our front counter when an out-of-state family comes through and places a bunch of orders. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't there to hear it. But shortly after they had arrived, Abby came back and told me that a bunch of customers had come through and harassed Steph for her appearance. I headed out front, told Steph to follow me to the back, and after she broke down explaining what happened, I gave her a free, paid break to just take it easy for a bit. I hopped out the front to have a chat with Abby about how to handle that situation, namely, grab me so I can take over the transaction, and how we're going to break down the rest of the Arvo if I decide to send Steph home. It's at this point, Mum spots me having a discussion with her from across the food court and decides to approach us. Mum, it turns out, was the person in this family group responsible for giving my employee. And oh boy, does she have views. From 5 feet away, she yells at me that what I'm doing is incredibly disrespectful to all of my customers. So loud that the 100 other patrons of the food court stop and stare from as far as 30 meters. I briefly tell her that I'm not being disrespectful to anyone, and that I am explaining to my colleague the plan for the rest of the afternoon. As a side note, it's obvious she's assumed that I'm bad-mouthing her in some way, and presumably has made this assumption because the way she's acted so far has been below the standards I'd expect from human garbage. Mum, still yelling, tells me to get the manager, now. I tell her that I am the manager, and would gladly address her questions if she has any, though I can reassure her there has been no disrespect to anyone so far. And could you please calm down and explain to me what the problem is, as my job is only to help. She calls bullshit and asks for my direct supervisor. I tell her the only person directly above me is the owner, and that he's out of state at a conference. She asks for his supervisor, and I tell her the only other person she could talk to above me would be the development manager for our state, who is also at the conference. At this point, she's realized that she's not getting hold of another set of ear above mine, so she launches on into a tirade, and I you not, word for word. I don't know how you retards do it down here, but I come from poverty-stricken suburb of national renown in the next city. I manage a store there, and up there, the customer is always right and should always be respected. And that means when I pay you, I get what I want, and you do. Not get to say anything about me to anyone. I assured her I hadn't said a word about her, was confused about what she was alluding to, and could she please explain what caused this entire situation in the first place, as I now have a very nice young girl crying in the back of my store and believe I may have to call security due to continued harassment of mall employees. At this, she pales and calls her sister over, and before she can arrive, I assure her that it would be in her best interest to detail any problem she has with my store to my head office in an incident report on our website. I then handed her a business card and told her as quietly as I could that, due to their ongoing escalation of the issue, they were no longer welcome around my premises, and I would be getting in contact with mall security to file an incident report and have them permanently barred from shopping at City Name Shopping Center. At saying that, I can honestly say I have never seen 2 grown women run so fast in my life, and by the looks of it, I doubt they'd ever tried to either. Security later swung past, having caught them at one of the exits. And it turned out they'd been shoplifting from a number of boutique stores using their kid's stroller, with the kid still in it. And could I please give them a statement and security camera footage for the interaction? Some fucking people, man. TLDR. If you're going to break the law, don't go drawing attention to yourself like an entitled.